Once in a while, Raid release a champion that they realize is going to be too damn broken for the game, so they have to go back on what they did and nerf that champion. And this is one of those champions that we're going to be talking about today. We're talking about Urogrim. Now, this guy was part of a fusion back in the day. I can't be bothered to figure out which fusion, but it was one of those ones. So if somebody wants to leave a comment down below if you have a better memory than me and remind us all of which fusion this guy was a part of. Now, he had a kit that was absolutely fantastic, and they realized it was a bit too strong, so they had to actually increase the cooldown of one of his skills by 1 turn, and the player base was a little bit upset about it, but I still think he is a very solid champion, so we're going to be doing a little spotlight on him here today. Skull Staff, level 1, attacks one enemy 2 times, each hit having a 50% chance of placing a big version of poison. A2, Tingly Tincture, removes all debuffs from an ally, then heals them by 40% of their max HP, and this is on a 3-turn cooldown, and this is the one that had its chance in, or rather its cooldown increase, so this used to book to a 3-turn cooldown. So he's going to place 2 5% poison debuffs on all enemies for 2 turns, also places a continuous heal on all allies for 2 turns. It now books to a 4-turn cooldown, unfortunately, but I do still think that this is an incredibly strong skill, and I do think that he is a fantastic champion. Let's go ahead and take a look at him inside my champion collection here, if I can find him, and I'll show you how I have him built and all those sorts of good things. Now, he is, of course, a very good champion for something like Dragon, and in fact, if you have him built well enough, he can actually solo inside the Dragon. I don't have him built out inside Regen, which certainly does help. I do have him built inside Immortal Speed and in One Piece Feral coming in from the Amulet here, so if you had better gear to throw on this champion, that would help your account a lot. I do have him quite slow. This guy is essentially realistically in like tier 3 or tier 4 gear on my account, so certainly not the best stuff that I have by any means. And I just noticed that his mouth kind of looks like a weathered pumpkin too after it's been carved out for Halloween, right? Which is kind of weird, but it is what it is, I suppose. So what do we have him built out in? These are going to be the stats here. 61k HP, 4100 defense, 200 speed flat, 354 accuracy, and 180 resistance. Now, I would recommend increasing that resistance a little bit. I have tried to run him inside Dragon Stage 20, and unfortunately, he just doesn't have enough juice to get it done on his own. He's not resisting any of the debuffs or anything like that that are coming his way, which doesn't help his use case whatsoever. This is the gear that he's got, though, so even with those gauntlets, if they were built out with a little bit more HP instead of defense, and of course with the upper gear, if it was glyphed out, he'd be quite a bit stronger as well. I want to give you guys a realistic showcase of this champion, though, so I don't want to just build him out in the absolute best gear possible and then say, hey, this is a fair review or this is a fair spotlight of this champion, because I am a late game player, but I don't have this guy built out in incredible gear. For what I use him for, this is perfectly fine. Let's talk about his aura. Speed in all battles by 20%. Makes him a decent aura for something even like Siege if you're really desperate, right? Blessings, I do have him built inside Emergency Heal, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense unless you think about the Blood Shield ring that he has. So it's going to give him 5% of damage dealt shield after attacking, but the important thing is that no matter how small that shield is, it's going to work with Emergency Heal. So essentially anytime that shield gets broken, he's going to go ahead and heal himself, in this case for 6% of his max HP. Obviously this blessing gets incredibly stronger as you awaken it more, right? So up to 15% of his max HP every time that's broken. And then, like I mentioned, these are the total stats here as well. If you're not running him inside Emergency Heal, some other blessings I would recommend are not going to be Cruelty, surprisingly, just because he doesn't do a lot of hits. His A3 is simply just placing. You can use him inside Nature's Wrath, though, which is going to increase the damage on his A1 a little bit, but he's certainly not a damage-dealing champion, so overall I think probably Emergency Heal is the best way to go with him. In terms of masteries, these are how I have him built out, so Evil Eye and in Lore of Steel to increase the bonuses gained from sets a little bit there. I don't have him fully done in masteries, but if I did, I would come down to Eagle Eye as well as Master Hexer, and then I would get counterattack masteries on the defense tree there as well. We do have the Faction Wars open right now for the Urogrim tribes, so let's go ahead and run through stage 21 here and kind of show you what this champion is all about. Now, I don't know how long this particular stage is going to take. I don't usually do it on manual like this, but I'll tell you what, it was actually a stage that I struggled with for quite some time because I just didn't have the damage to get through it. As you can see though, on wave 1 we are doing pretty good in terms of the damage output. Excuse me. And part of the reason for that, of course, is the poisons coming in from Urogrim, but more importantly, it's also just the strong nukage coming in from Grush. I've actually done a champion showcase on Grush on my channel, so I've kind of showcased, you know, what he is capable of. There is one of the stages as well, I think it might be stage 20, where you're paired with going against, it's one of two things, so it's either the Valkyries or it's going to be the Manaya waves. It's one of those two, but it's extremely tanky. It's very hard to get through. I had to push through that, of course, to get to my Lydia, and it was definitely frustrating. Now, I didn't actually have Urogrim at that time, so I had to depend on Grush, his abilities, and then, of course, I had to also depend on Bellower coming in with some of his stuns, so that certainly slowed things down and made it a lot more RNG-based. But even right now, on any particular enemy, you can see that we have like 3 and 4 poisons out on them. So every time they're getting a turn, they're going to be taking between like 15 to 20% of their max HP as damage, which is absolutely fantastic, right? It just helps to make your runs so much stronger. And without a dedicated damage dealer in here, like somebody that you would think of as a traditional nuker, this team is very strong, right? So it's going to be interesting to see that damage break up at the end too. We're about a minute and a half in on stage 21, and we are now on to the boss, so we'll kind of see how long this takes here. This particular boss is the annoying one that places the fears and true fears on us, or the true fears rather. So having somebody who can essentially just come in and cleanse that from one of your champions is fantastic as well. Of course, if you're struggling to do this stage on auto, you can also come in and manual it, but Urogrim is such a strong champion for content like this, and then you might be wondering why you'd want to even solo something like Dragon with a champion like him, and the reason for that being, right now, for example, in the Gretel fusion, we do have a Dragon tournament going on, so if you can solo it, you can then put 4 food champions in with them on stage 20, and then those food champions are essentially just getting free XP, so that when we roll around to the champion training tournament, you have a bunch of champions ready to rank up right away, right? And there are some situations where essentially the champion training and the dungeon divers overlap. So if you're able to get kind of a 2-for-1 like that, it is absolutely fantastic, especially if you're a low spend or a free-to-play player, right? You're essentially just doubling up on your resources. And I mean, realistically, who doesn't like doubling up on their resources, right? So very strong in that regard. And there are plenty of champions that can, you know, essentially solo or duo the Dragon, so it doesn't make him particularly special, but there are certainly a few things that set him apart. So of course, having that cleanse and the heal on himself when he's last alive is going to be very strong, and then of course having him be void affinity is even better, because that means that any sort of hits he places are not going to be weak hits. You're sure to get those poisons out, right? And that is part of it as well that makes him so good. So if we think about a Venomage or a Corvus or some sort of a champion like that places those AoE poisons, they have affinity matchups, right, that go into it. So, and they also hit, which means there can be weak hits, you can trigger counterattacks, all those sorts of things. He just straight up places his poisons. He doesn't care about affinities, he doesn't care about counterattacks, those sorts of things, which makes him even better. I'm going to stop rambling here for a few minutes. We're just going to come back once we've killed the boss. Now, real quick here, just while we're whittling down the boss the rest of the way, I am making a hard push for 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you guys can find it in your heart to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, it would mean the world to me. And as I always say, thank you guys so much for the support on the channel. It has been absolutely fantastic. This last year, the channel's seen so much growth, it is crazy. We now take out the boss here. Let's see what we did. So as you can see, Urogrim comes in with 661 damage, and that's as opposed to the Grush, who has 742,000. So keep in mind that Grush is a dedicated damage dealer with 100% crit rate, crit damage, defense, all that sort of stuff that you'd expect to see, as well as cruelty on him, right? Or is that Crushing Rend? I don't even know. Let's go ahead and take a look. I forgot which blessing that is by the icon, and I know somebody's going to bully me if I'm wrong. So no, that is in fact cruelty. Now the only thing is, Grush doesn't have something crazy like a Savage set on him or something, right? But these are the stats. So he's doing very decent damage, and Urogrim is still able to do that much damage, and he had a lot of healing in there as well because of his A2, and then of course the continuous heal. So he is such a strong champion. Let me know down in the description, or in the comments rather, below, if you use Urogrim and more specifically where you use him. And then if you do have him built as a solo champion, go ahead and let me know your builds down below as well. I'd be very curious to hear about that. As always though, thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.